Okay, here we're going to sort shapes. Now, previous to this lesson, you would have had students create 2D shapes and build them. This is for a lesson to follow up with that. So code the other sprites to create shapes and drag them to fit the Venn diagram. The bottom area is the overlap between the two sides. And then mentioning to the students any shapes in the bottom would have attributes from both sides. So this was to solidify the concept of parallel and congruent with students. Here, when I'm building this shape, you have the red bow tie. I've built something, repeat 4 times, move 40 steps, turn 90 degrees. So my students would be familiar with this by now, and they would know that that is a square because it's 40 steps on each side and turn 90 degrees each time. So that's good and something they definitely understand. When I move to the bow tie, at first, this one seems confusing. But once they get familiar with angles, 60 degrees and 120 degrees, they know that it's not 90, that it's either smaller or larger. So that starts to give them clues. And then we're moving 20 steps and 40 steps. So instantly they know it's not a rhombus. And then we run it and we see what it makes. So we made a parallelogram. So if I use the code from this shape here, I drag it down to the blue bow tie, I can take this and change it to make a rhombus. To make a rhombus, all I really need to do is have it move 20 steps, making each side the same. Now I have a rhombus. So the students can kind of build upon the shapes that are here. They can take this code for making a square, drop it in over here, and then they have to adjust it. So 40 steps turn 90 degrees. If I double click on a Chromebook, two-finger tap, or right click on a computer and duplicate just those 2 blocks, I can do this, and then I can make this 70, instantly creating a rectangle. The rectangle is a little big, so I might make it smaller just to make this fit better. So I might go 20 by 40, and then press space, clear everything, and run it again. There, that's more manageable. So as they go, they have these shapes, and then we could decide that it's parallel on one side and congruent on the other side. So if the sides are parallel and congruent, they would go at the bottom. So if I grab the sprite and pull it down here, it will draw that shape at the bottom. Now, to do that properly, I would reset first with the spacebar, then drag it down here so I could draw that. And then my bow tie, here, the green bow tie, I know that this is making a parallelogram. So all the sides are not congruent, but they are parallel. So I would leave it on this side for parallel. For the students to add their words at the top, it's as simple as adding a new sprite, going to letters, choosing the text awesome, okay, and then switch to costumes and call this congruent. Shrink it, make it reasonably sized. It's always a little harder with letters to get them to shrink, so you got to find that center point, which I don't seem to be having a lot of luck with. I'll try again. Shrink. Now, if shrinking isn't playing nice with you, which happens sometimes, the other option is I can go to looks and I can set size to 50% and then just click that block and boom, you're done. So I don't even need to keep that block out. You can get rid of it. And then I can clone congruent by a 2-finger tap on a Chromebook or right click. And then the second congruent, drag it up here and go to the costume and change it to parallel. So you can continue to build this program yourself. And so then when you run the program, if I remember correctly, this was rhombus. So if I run the program now, parallel, these are parallel, but all sides congruent. And so maybe you change this to saying all sides congruent, because obviously they do have congruent sides. So all sides congruent and parallel, and down here, all sides congruent and parallel are these two shapes. So with the yellow bow tie, maybe the students are trying to create a triangle. So then they say, okay, when green flag clicked, and of course they've had a lesson before on how to do this, but move 60 steps, and what are they going to turn? So this is the trick for them, is figuring out the turns. So sometimes it's 120, and sometimes it is 60, and it's just a case of figuring out when. So repeat 3 times, and it's all about testing. It's okay to make mistakes. Oh, sorry, got to put pen down. There we go. Okay, let's try that now. There we go. And then they might want to make that smaller, so they could go 30 degrees. Reset. Run it again. So that is definitely going to come over here on the congruent side with 0 sides parallel. Okay, you can continue and do more shapes.